Urgent, Nikola Jokic makes a strong statement about LeBron James and Luka Dončić. Stay until the end to find out everything. But first, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything about the Lakers. Nikola Jokic rarely speaks in superlatives. His calm demeanor, dry wit and deliberate style of communication have become as iconic as his no-look passes and unguardable post footwork. But when news broke that Luka Dončić had been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, joining forces with LeBron James, it was one of those rare moments where the Joker paused, shook his head slightly and allowed a brief, telling smile. "It's going to be very interesting," he said during a post-practice interview with the Denver Nuggets media. He left it at that. But those who knew Jokic well understood, that wasn't indifference. That was a quiet man digesting the gravity of something seismic. The NBA had seen super teams before. LeBron himself had built and broken a few. But this was different. Luka Dončić, the 26-year-old Slovenian phenom, had long been viewed as the heir to the throne that LeBron James had held for 2 decades. Luka was a walking triple-double, a clutch-time killer, a savant whose brain processed the game in 4K. And now he was sharing the floor with the man who had defined modern basketball. To Jokic, this wasn't just a roster shakeup. This was basketball symmetry meeting chaos. "They're both like the sun," he later told a Serbian reporter. "Everything orbits around them. Now they are in the same system. 2 suns, sometimes it gives more light, sometimes it burns." That metaphor said more than Jokic perhaps realized. From a basketball standpoint, he understood the mechanics. Luka and LeBron were both primary ball handlers, elite playmakers who loved to control tempo. The challenge was clear. Could 2 basketball geniuses coexist without stepping on each other's instincts? Jokic had faced both. He'd been torched by Luka's floaters and dismantled by LeBron's fast breaks. He had seen how both could manipulate defenses, how both had turned their respective franchises into gravitational centers. Watching them now become allies was like watching 2 chess grandmasters team up after years of battle. He also saw the emotional weight of it. LeBron had never passed the torch, he'd extended it. He mentored, sure. He applauded the young stars, but he remained the sun in every sky. By allowing Luka into his locker room, into his system, LeBron wasn't just teaming up, he was rewriting his own legacy in real time. And for Luka, this was a test. The Dallas years had cemented his place as an elite individual player. Now, under the Hollywood spotlight, beside the greatest player of the 21st century, he had to become more. Not just a star. A legend. "I think, if it works, it could be beautiful," Jokic said. Then he chuckled softly. "If not, it will be fun to watch anyway." For someone like Jokic, who valued rhythm, chemistry, and trust above all else, the LeBron-Luka experiment was as much about personalities as it was about playbooks. Could Luka adjust to a system not entirely his own? Could LeBron let go of control without letting go of greatness? The league was abuzz. Social media exploded. Pundits on every network called it the end of parity, or the beginning of internal combustion. But in a quiet gym in Denver, Nikola Jokic simply watched tape. He studied how Luka came off double drags. How LeBron shifted defenders with his eyes. How they talked in timeouts, how they pointed to the corners, how they read the court like a symphony sheet. He wasn't watching as a fan. He was watching as a future opponent. A future problem. "People think talent always wins," he mused to his trainer. "But basketball is like jazz. Too much solo and it loses the groove." Still, even Jokic couldn't help but feel a thrill. Something historic was brewing in LA. And even a 2-time MVP, a finals MVP, and the best passing big man the game had ever seen, was curious. Maybe even a little excited. Jokic was never a fan of drama. The NBA, with its headlines, power moves, and super team storylines, had become a league as much about narrative as it was about basketball. But Nikola remained grounded in what he called the purity of the game. He didn't post cryptic tweets, didn't engage in recruitment talks during All-Star Weekend, and never made a scene at press conferences. So when reporters pressed him after the Lakers' opening night game featuring the LeBron-Luka duo, expecting hot takes or bold predictions, Jokic offered a simple observation. "They share the ball," he said. "That's a good start." Of course, it was more than that. From a purely tactical perspective, the debut was a clinic. Luka operated out of the high pick and roll with LeBron spaced on the wing. Then, in a sudden reversal, LeBron initiated offense while Luka ghosted behind screens, surveying the defense. It was like two conductors passing the baton mid-symphony, never missing a beat. Jokic, watching from a quiet film room in Ball Arena, leaned forward, not in awe but in analysis. He wasn't dazzled by the highlights. He was dissecting the angles. LeBron's gravity is still strong, he said to Nuggets assistant Ognjen Stojakovic. But Luka bends the defense in a different way. Like, with curiosity. He waits to see what you will do. That fascinated Jokic. While LeBron enforced tempo through athletic force and tactical domination, Luka invited chaos, then danced through it. One used power, the other paradoxically used slowness. Luka's pace had always felt awkward to defenders, but to Jokic it was art. Luka is like water in your hands, he told a Serbian podcast. You think you can hold him. But he slips through fingers. He finds a way. And now that water flowed beside fire. The Lakers were still adapting, of course. There were moments when the offense stalled, when roles overlapped, when LeBron deferred too much or Luka forced a read. But the promise was there. And promise, when shared by two of the most gifted minds in the game, was dangerous. Jokic wasn't concerned about the highlights. He had seen plenty of superstars team up only to fall apart by April. What he looked for were the subtleties. Did Luka cut when LeBron had the ball? Did LeBron screen for Luka without the ball? Did they trust the corner guy to hit the shot? Did they laugh together? Because basketball, as Jokic saw it, wasn't just made of points and plays, it was made of trust. And if these two titans could trust one another, the results could be devastating for the rest of the league. He studied how the Lakers defended too. With LeBron still anchoring weak-side rotations and Luka surprisingly engaged in team schemes, they weren't just an offensive powerhouse. They were evolving into a two-way machine. They won't be perfect, Jokic admitted. But perfect is not the goal. Dangerous is enough. That was a theme he returned to often. Perfection was a myth, a distraction. In his own career, Jokic had found success not by chasing perfection but by mastering timing, rhythm, and connection. He saw those seeds being planted in LA. Off the court, the media frenzy was relentless. Every interaction between Luka and LeBron was dissected. A shared smile went viral. A timeout conversation was analyzed like geopolitics. But to Jokic, what mattered was something subtler. They walk back on defense at the same speed, he noted once. That tells you more than interviews. To the outsider, it sounded like a strange comment. But in Jokic's mind, synchronized habits revealed synchronized minds. As the season unfolded, he didn't root for or against the Lakers. He wasn't built that way. But privately, he admitted something to his brothers back in Somber during a late-night video call. If they figure it out, he said, then the rest of us, we will have to become even smarter. For Nikola Jokic, that was not a complaint, it was a challenge. And he never backed down from those. Nikola Jokic had always been a student of cause and effect. To him, basketball was not isolated to possessions or box scores. It was a ripple effect. One change in one team often sent subtle waves through the rest of the league. So when LeBron James and Luka Dončić officially began dominating together as Lakers, Jokic didn't just observe them. He observed everyone else. You see it already, he told his trainer after a film session. Other teams are changing. You feel the echo. And he was right. In the weeks following the formation of the LeBron-Luka duo, teams across the Western Conference began retooling strategies. Golden State sped up their tempo, hoping to beat the new Lakers in transition before the defense could settle. Phoenix shifted their pick-and-roll schemes to blitz earlier. Even the Timberwolves, long considered a lumbering defensive team, began experimenting with five-out spacing. But no one felt the impact more directly than Denver. Jokic and the Nuggets, the reigning champions, were now seen not as the hunted but as co-favorites. With the Lakers turning into a two-headed juggernaut, the conversation shifted. Every sports show, every podcast, every basketball YouTuber had the same topic in rotation. Can Jokic stop this? He didn't take it personally. I don't stop anyone, he said dryly to the media. I just make it difficult. Sometimes. In truth, Jokic relished the challenge. He watched tape with fresh eyes, trying to predict how Lakers coach Darvin Ham would deploy Luka off-ball or how LeBron would adjust in clutch time when Luka demanded the final possession. He noted the angles of their post entries, the timing of their cross-court passes, and even their interactions in dead ball moments. The most dangerous thing, he said, is when two geniuses start understanding each other. It wasn't just about their talent, it was about their chemistry. Early signs were promising. Luka had begun anticipating where LeBron liked his shooters to be. LeBron had started running the floor a step faster, knowing Luka's outlet passes could find him anywhere. They were not just coexisting, they were evolving together. Jokic had seen superstar duos falter under ego. He'd seen tension bubble beneath the surface, masked by smiles and media soundbites. But so far there was no hint of that here. LeBron, now in his 40s, seemed almost relieved to let Luka handle stretches of games. Luka, for his part, showed deference in key moments, often looking to LeBron for direction. It's rare, Jokic admitted. Usually two leaders fight silently. But they listen. That mutual respect was something Jokic found beautiful. In his own partnership with Jamal Murray, he knew how fragile chemistry could be, how much work it took to maintain trust through losses, missed shots, and the grind of a long season. He saw those early threads forming between LeBron and Luka, and it made him nod silently. Still, he wasn't romantic about it. I like what they do, he told a local Denver journalist. But I also want to beat them. That was the paradox of Jokic. He could admire greatness without surrendering to it. He could appreciate art while planning its counterpoint. Every clip of LeBron hitting a skip pass or Luka faking out two defenders became data for Jokic's mental library. And in the locker room, his teammates could sense the shift. He's locked in earlier this year, said Michael Porter Jr. I think he feels what's coming. Jokic never said it out loud, but he knew the road to another title would run through Los Angeles. Whether in the Western Conference Finals or earlier, it was inevitable. LeBron and Luka were not just a storyline. They were a storm system building on the horizon. You can't stop the weather, he said once, but you can build a roof. That was how he approached them, not as unstoppable gods but as problems to be solved, puzzles to be cracked. And slowly, as he watched more film, read more tendencies, and felt the pulse of the league adjust to this new power, he began constructing his answer. Quietly. Carefully. Like always. Nikola Jokic wasn't the type to dwell on history, not publicly. Ask him about MVP awards and he'd shrug. Mention his standing among the all-time great centers, and he'd mumble something humble about just trying to help his team. But in private, in quiet conversations with his brothers or close teammates, he sometimes allowed himself to think about legacy. And the formation of the LeBron-Luka duo? That wasn't just a roster change. That was a statement about time, power, and narrative. They are not just players, Jokic said one night after a win over the Blazers. They are myths now. And myths playing together. That changes the story. He wasn't wrong. LeBron James was already immortalized. 4 titles. 2 decades of dominance. An icon in Cleveland, a champion in Miami, a savior in Los Angeles. His career had outlasted eras, styles, rivals. His very presence redefined expectations of longevity, versatility, and professionalism. And Luka? He was the prodigy. The successor. A savant with flair, born from the European school but shaped in the chaos of the NBA. He hadn't won a title yet, but his numbers, his moments, and his command of the game at such a young age had already placed him in the conversation of the next one. Now they were no longer separated by torch or timeline. They were teammates. Jokic saw what that meant. For Luka, it's validation. For LeBron, it's preservation, he said during a rare long sit-down with an international outlet. Together they share the spotlight, and also protect it from dimming. There was genius in that move. By inviting Luka into the Laker legacy, LeBron wasn't just adding a co-star, he was extending the life of his narrative. And Luka, by accepting the role, wasn't just chasing rings, He was stepping into the pressure cooker of legacy building on a scale few had ever faced. To be great is hard, Jokic said, but to be great in Los Angeles with LeBron, that is something else. He remembered his own rise, how the media slowly began treating him not just as a good player, but as a face of the league. The scrutiny, the expectations, the constant comparisons. Now Luka was experiencing that at full blast, but with the added complexity of doing it beside the greatest name of his generation. Jokic didn't envy that, but he respected it. It's not easy to shine when the sun is next to you, he said with a knowing look. But if anyone can, it's Luka. There was a deeper tension brewing in all this, one that few would admit out loud. The formation of this duo wasn't just about chasing wins, it was about positioning. About who would be remembered as what. Was this the start of LeBron's graceful handoff? Or Luka's emergence as a co-equal? Was this duo built to share glory, or to measure it? Jokic pondered this late at night, lying on the massage table after a back-to-back in Minnesota. His trainer scrolled through clips of the Lakers' recent win. Luka had 39 and 12, LeBron added 28 and 9. But it wasn't the numbers that caught Jokic's eye. It was a moment late in the fourth. LeBron deferred to Luka at the top of the key, then moved to the wing without hesitation. He trusts him, Jokic whispered. Not as a teammate. As an equal. That trust was dangerous. It meant less ego. More flow. More efficiency. It meant two of the smartest players in the world were learning to communicate in glances and gestures. No egos. No power struggle. And yet, Jokic knew, legacy always found its way in. Who took the last shot? Who lifted the trophy? Who got the finals MVP? These things matter, he said quietly. Even if we pretend they don't. For now the harmony was real. The Lakers were winning. LeBron looked rejuvenated. Luka looked liberated. But what would happen when adversity struck? When the shots didn't fall? When criticism came as it always did? That, Jokic believed, would be the true test, not of talent but of character. Until then he watched. He prepared. He adjusted. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't post cryptic emojis. He just got better, because he knew that soon enough the collision course would come. And when it did, legacy would be on the line for everyone. Including him. There's a calm that follows dominance. When a team is winning, the pressure seems to melt away. But for Nikola Jokic, the success of the LeBron-Luka Lakers didn't bring peace. It brought urgency. Every win they stacked became a message. Every slick no-look pass, every dagger three in transition, every press conference full of chemistry and smiles, it all pointed to the same inevitable truth. The Lakers weren't a temporary story. They were a storm building consistency. And Jokic, more than anyone, began preparing for it. You don't wait for the earthquake to start building support, he told his strength coach. You do it while the ground is still steady. So he trained differently. Not louder. Not longer. But sharper. In practice he worked obsessively on backpedaling from hedge coverages, anticipating Luka's deep-range manipulation. He reviewed hours of LeBron's post-ups from both the elbow and short corner, memorizing his pivot patterns. He even studied how they celebrated together, because in his mind joy was a sign of comfort, and comfort made teams faster, looser, more dangerous. What separated Jokic wasn't just his skill, it was his mind. He saw the game not as a war of stars, but of systems, of tendencies, of invisible connections. They're not beating teams because they score 60 together, he told Jamal Murray after practice. They beat them because the other guys are confident. And he was right. The presence of LeBron and Luka made teammates better. Austin Reeves looked more relaxed. Rui Hachimura's shot selection had improved. Even the bench played with more rhythm. Jokic understood that the true power of superstars wasn't just what they did, it was how they changed the people around them. So he changed too. Jokic began orchestrating even more trust into his own teammates. He forced more cuts from MPJ. He encouraged Aaron Gordon to post mismatches more often. He let Jamal take over fourth quarters even when he felt he had the better look. If they're going to play like a machine, he said, then we must be Jazz. That idea guided everything. Where LeBron and Luka used control, Jokic chose flow. Where they executed plays to perfection, he improvised with elegance. He wanted the Nuggets to become unpredictable, unreadable. While LA developed into a two-headed monster, Jokic worked on building an eight-limbed ghost. Still, he knew talent couldn't be ignored. Luka's footwork was refined, almost surgical now. LeBron, even in his 40s, still had an explosive first step that could break traps in an instant. Together, they were beginning to run sequences that made defenders hesitate, just long enough for the floor to open like a trapdoor. So Jokic drilled the mental part. Every off day he sat in the film room with no lights, no noise, just tape. He studied their late-game ATOs. Noted how they adjusted after timeouts. Tracked the language of their eyes. "Watch this," he said to his coach during one session. "Here Luka looks left, but he's already calculated the skip pass 2 passes ahead. LeBron doesn't even move. He knows it's coming. That's not talent. That's trust multiplied by time." That kind of chemistry, he knew, could not be dismantled with effort alone. It had to be disrupted. He began tinkering with new schemes. Denver's defensive sets became more complex. Delayed doubles. Switching the weak side. Showing zone and snapping back to man. Everything was built not to stop LeBron and Luka. No one stopped them, but to make them think just 1 second longer. 1 second is everything, he told the team. In that second, the window closes. Jokic didn't say much publicly about the Lakers. When asked, he repeated variations of "they're good" or "they play smart," and left it at that. But inside, his engine was running hotter than ever. Because he wasn't just preparing for a game. He was preparing for a moment. A collision of giants. A test of two philosophies. Control versus chaos. Power versus harmony. Legacy versus evolution. And when that moment came, he wanted to be ready not just to survive it, but to define it. Basketball has always been a game of gravity, not the physical kind, but the invisible pull of attention. Some players demand it by scoring, others by passing, and a few by their very presence. For years, LeBron James had owned the most powerful gravity in the NBA. Defenders shifted toward him even before he touched the ball. Entire defenses were built to contain him, knowing that failing to do so could mean a 12-0 run in less than 2 minutes. Luka Dončić, on the other hand, had a more deceptive kind of gravity. His movements were slower but somehow more disorienting. He made defenders unsure, like they were playing on sand. Now, together on the same team, that gravity had multiplied, not additively but exponentially. Nikola Jokic saw it immediately. "They are two different planets," he said in an interview with a Serbian outlet. "But when they orbit each other, they pull everything into their system." Watching film of their latest win against Boston, Jokic saw something he couldn't ignore. The Celtics, usually a disciplined defense, had started abandoning their structure just to contain the duo. On one possession, 3 defenders collapsed on Luka's drive, leaving LeBron wide open at the top. On another, LeBron drew 2 on a post-up, then hit Luka with a one-handed skip pass in rhythm. The result? A wide-open corner 3. Again. "Gravity breaks systems," Jokic muttered to himself, scribbling notes on a napkin in the team plane. For Jokic, who prided himself on making others better, this was more than impressive. It was educational. He understood gravity better than anyone. When he held the ball at the high post, defenders floated toward him. He manipulated them not with speed but with subtle timing. A head fake. A pivot. A no-look. But LeBron and Luka had created something different. A gravitational overlay. "They create 2 centers of pressure at once," he explained to Jamal Murray. "It's like guarding 2 jokers at the same time. One reads before the action. The other creates the action from the read." That dual threat forced teams into impossible choices. Help too early and you're burned by skip passes. Help too late and one of them finishes with ease. Don't help at all and you get ISO'd to death. Jokic had seen talented duos before. Durant and Curry. LeBron and Kyrie. Even Kawhi and PG in their better moments. But none had this level of mutual manipulation of space. "They're not just playing," Jokic told his strength coach. "They're warping." It wasn't just offense either. The Lakers had begun using Luka's size more strategically. He was switching into the post against smaller guards, conserving energy but staying engaged. LeBron, ever the cerebral defender, resumed quarterbacking the weak side. The result was a defense that, while not elite, was increasingly opportunistic, feeding off their offensive dominance like sharks in bloodied water. The synergy was clear. Jokic took this personally, not in the emotional sense but in the professional sense. For years, he had prided himself on being the rare big man who could shift the floor without ever leaving his feet. Now he was witnessing two perimeter players doing the same, in tandem. "It's not about who jumps higher," he told a local Denver reporter. "It's about who moves others without moving." That was Jokic's philosophy. And now he saw it echoed in LeBron and Luka. In a way, it validated everything he believed about basketball. But it also lit a fire. He began experimenting in practices. Setting screens off ball in unusual places. Running two-man actions with Jamal from above the three-point line, just to mess with defender alignment. Introducing delay cuts from the dunker spot. He was building his own gravitational field, one that didn't depend on flash or speed, but on constant decision-making pressure. Because he knew, if gravity was the new battleground, then the winner wouldn't be the strongest or the fastest. It would be the one who made the other four players on the court disappear. And that was something Jokic understood better than anyone. There's a silence that descends over a season just before it begins to sharpen. Not the literal silence of locker rooms or quiet arenas, but the kind of silence that lives in the spaces between headlines. The subtle hush before the narratives harden, before the top contenders start circling each other, waiting for the moment of contact. Nikola Jokic knew that silence well. He had lived it. And now, as the calendar turned past the All-Star break and the Lakers kept climbing the standings, he could feel the storm forming behind that quiet. "You hear it in how people stop talking," he said to himself on a walk near Sloan's Lake. "They don't say maybe anymore. They say when." When the Nuggets face the Lakers. When Luka and LeBron meet Jokic in the West Finals. When legacy is decided again. Jokic never sought the spotlight, but he understood the weight of the stage. The NBA wasn't just a league, it was a theater. The script didn't wait for permission to write itself. And the script was writing toward collision. Every win the Lakers racked up, every vintage LeBron fourth quarter, every Luka game winner, all of it added tension to the air. But what fascinated Jokic most wasn't the play on the court. It was the composure. "They're not chasing anything," he told Coach Malone during a film review. "They already believe it belongs to them." That was dangerous. Confidence could be earned. But the scariest kind was the kind you didn't need to prove anymore. He had seen LeBron like this before, calm, slow-burning, moving at his own pace while the league buzzed around him. What was new was Luka adopting that rhythm. The wild, emotional Maverick prodigy had learned restraint. He wasn't just flashy anymore, he was cold. "They're both playing like old men," Jokic said with a grin. But very dangerous old men. Denver, by contrast, still played with a chip. That edge had brought them a title. But edge also carried weight. Hunger needed to be managed. Too much and it cracked into frustration. Too little and it dulled. So Jokic began managing that too. In practices he cracked more jokes. Lightened the room. He reminded Jamal that playing free didn't mean playing loose. Reminded MPJ that confidence and discipline weren't enemies. Reminded Aaron Gordon that defense was still the foundation, even against teams that looked like offensive symphonies. Because Jokic wasn't just preparing himself for the Lakers. He was preparing his team. "They will try to control the mood of the game," he said. "We control the tone." Tone was everything. It meant not reacting when LeBron hit a fadeaway over two hands. It meant not flinching when Luka threaded a pass through three defenders. It meant staying steady in the face of highlights designed to break spirit. That, to Jokic, was where real winning happened, not in the scoreboard but in the balance. Balance of tempo, of emotion, of intent. He remembered what it felt like when Denver won the finals, not the final buzzer but the feeling of clarity that came before it. That realization that they weren't chasing greatness anymore, they were executing it. Now he saw that same energy coming from the Lakers. "It will not be a game," he said to his brothers during dinner one night. it will be an argument. And every possession would be a sentence in that argument. LeBron would speak in rhythm. Luka in misdirection. Jokic would answer with patience. And somewhere in between, greatness would be decided, not shouted but whispered through execution. That was the silence Jokic felt now. The silence before everything speeds up. The quiet before the most beautiful chaos. A stillness that only the truly prepared can recognize for what it is. An invitation. By late March, the league had shifted. Not officially, there were still games to be played, matchups to be settled, seeding to be earned. But under the surface, the NBA was already preparing itself. Fans, analysts, coaches, players. Everyone could feel the gravitational inevitability building toward one confrontation. Lakers versus Nuggets. LeBron and Luka versus Jokic and the reigning champs. There were other teams in the mix, sure. The Thunder with their youth and precision. The Clippers with their unpredictability. The Timberwolves with their defensive brutality. But deep down, everyone knew what was coming. It wasn't just about matchups. It was about mythology. They're writing stories already, Jokic told Jamal Murray after a tough win in Memphis. We just have to decide what kind of characters we want to be. He said it with a smile, but he meant it. Because now, every performance by LeBron and Luka echoed beyond the box score. Every dominant quarter. Every comeback. Every stare into the crowd after a dagger three, it wasn't just basketball. It was a reminder. A reminder that greatness doesn't fade quietly. That legacy isn't passed, it's contested. Jokic admired that. He didn't see LeBron as old. He saw him as relentless. The king was slowing down only in age, not in impact, not in vision, and certainly not in hunger. The way he picked apart defenses now was almost surgical. Fewer dunks, more precision. Less chaos, more inevitability. Luka, meanwhile, was evolving in fast forward. The weight he once wore in Dallas, that desperation, that exhaustion, had melted into something calmer, more dangerous. He still smiled after nutmegs and sidestep threes, but now it felt different. Controlled. Jokic watched all of it. He made a habit of staying late after Nuggets practices, watching Lakers games alone from a quiet corner of the film room. He didn't take notes anymore. He didn't need to. At that point, it was less scouting than meditation. I'm not learning what they do, he explained to assistant coach David Adelman. I'm learning how they think. Because strategy wasn't enough. Not against this version of LeBron and Luka. You had to anticipate narrative. You had to prepare not only for what they would try, but for when they would rise. They always wait for the moment, Jokic said. And when it comes, they take it. Like it's theirs. So he trained differently again. Not his body, his mind. He visualized late-game scenarios with both of them on the floor. Luka setting ghost screens for LeBron. LeBron baiting switches, then stepping back into Luka's orbit. The mental where that would come from constant recalculation. He knew what it would feel like. He had been the one doing it to others for years. Now someone else could do it to him. And yet he didn't fear it. Because Jokic was never obsessed with proving he was better than anyone. He simply wanted to find the perfect moment inside the game, the pass, the cut, the read, that unlocked everything. And if it happened to come against the two best creators in the world, all the better. This is what you want, he told himself, walking alone through Ball Arena late one night. If you care about the game, you want this. He imagined it, the atmosphere. The national anthem echoing through a buzzing arena. The cameras. The first tip. LeBron's eyes narrowing. Luka biting his lip. The weight in the air, thick as altitude. That's where greatness reveals itself. Not in comfort. Not in blowouts. But in those tied games with 2 minutes left. In those silences between whistles when the crowd forgets to breathe. That's where legacy sharpens. And Jokic, for all his humility, wanted to be there. Not for the glory. But for the truth of it. Because no matter what happened, win or lose, celebrate or suffer, he knew that in that moment against them he would be playing the game in its purest form. Basketball without filter. Greatness without disguise. Truth without escape. And that was what he lived for. By April the schedule stopped mattering. The standings were all but set. The top seeds no longer played to earn position. They played to maintain rhythm. Everyone was circling, conserving, scouting. But some matchups didn't need seedings. They were written. Lakers versus Nuggets. LeBron. Luka. Jokic. A trilogy in motion, but for the first time with all the pieces perfectly placed. Not a finals rematch, not a theoretical clash, but a new war with new stakes. Denver, the defending champions. Los Angeles, the resurrected juggernaut. One team built on trust and tempo. The other on instinct and inevitability. And Jokic? He wasn't focused on legacy. Not yet. He was focused on alignment. We must arrive as ourselves, he told the locker room before the final home game. Not chasing ghosts. Not defending trophies. Just playing as we were meant to. He had watched enough basketball to know, the playoffs don't reward the best team. They reward the team that knows who it is and refuses to flinch. So he leaned into his identity. He didn't increase his scoring. He didn't post up more. He didn't talk trash. He didn't wave his finger or beat his chest. He passed. More than ever. Not to defer, to connect. To sharpen the collective mind of the Nuggets. To make sure the rhythm was symphonic. Every cut timed. Every read automatic. Every player empowered. Because he knew what was coming from the other side. Two maestros in full crescendo. LeBron, now playing with the wisdom of someone who had lived 10 careers in one. Luka, the 26-year-old phenom, already with the eyes of a 40-year-old floor general. They weren't just dominating, they were merging. The chemistry was no longer developing. It had arrived. And it was dangerous. They don't make the game smaller, Jokic said in a press conference. They make the court feel smaller. Because when Luka slows the game and LeBron speeds it up, in the same possession, defenders collapse into panic. And when panic sets in, even the best system cracks. But Denver had something rare. Continuity, clarity, and Jokic, the quiet core. Their power is momentum, he told assistant coach Popeye Jones. Ours is understanding. So the Nuggets didn't panic. They didn't overhaul schemes. They didn't hype the moment. They accepted it. In the film room, they studied the Lakers' two-man sequences like chess problems. Luka as the rook, LeBron as the queen, never in the same place twice but always threatening multiple angles. Jokic didn't try to solve them. He tried to invite them. Let them show us everything, he told the team. That's when we find the cracks. This wasn't bravado. It was calculation. Because Jokic didn't believe in fear. He believed in reaction time. And he knew, the slower a team thinks, the faster a great player controls them. So he simplified. Defensive reads reduced to two-option paths. Rotations trimmed of unnecessary switches. Off-ball actions repurposed to keep Luka chasing, LeBron shifting. We do not have to be better than them in the media, he said. Only in the next possession. Outside of Denver, the world roared. TV shows declared it the most anticipated series of the decade. Analysts predicted generational shifts, GOAT tests, dynasty implications. Inside the Nuggets practice facility, the noise didn't exist. Just a basket, a pass, a footstep, a breath. Jokic jogged to center court one night after practice had ended. The arena was empty. The jumbotron was off. The floor creaked beneath his sneakers. He stood there imagining it. The first possession. Luka holding the ball near the wing. LeBron curling from the weak side. A flash of purple and gold. The ball swinging. Jokic hedging. The shot going up. The crowd erupting. He smiled. Not because he feared it. Not because he welcomed it. But because, at long last, it meant something again. Basketball had returned to its highest form. And so had he. The night of the first playoff meeting between the Lakers and Nuggets was electric. Ball Arena was packed, every seat alive with anticipation, every fan knowing they were about to witness something rare. Not just a game but a collision of eras. For Nikola Jokic, standing under the bright lights, it wasn't about the crowd or the noise. It was about the moment, the pure essence of competition distilled into movement and will. LeBron James and Luka Dončić stood on the other side of the court. Two champions, two magicians, two leaders, fused into a new chapter in NBA history. Jokic felt no intimidation. Instead, he felt kinship. Because deep down they were all chasing the same thing. Meaning, the game was fast, fluid, beautiful. Every possession a conversation, every play a statement. Jokic moved like a conductor, orchestrating his team's responses, weaving through screens, passing, reading, reacting. LeBron's power met Luka's creativity in a relentless dance, challenging every inch of space. But Jokic stayed centered. He didn't try to overpower. He chose precision, timing, connection. Midway through the game, after a stunning no-look pass from Jokic to Aaron Gordon for a dunk, the arena exploded. Jokic caught his breath, eyes meeting LeBron's across the court. A silent acknowledgement passed between them, respect forged in battle. Later, during a timeout, Jokic thought back to all the hours spent watching film, all the quiet moments of preparation. The late nights visualizing plays. The mental training, the focus on balance. It was all for this. Not for trophies or headlines, but for the truth of the game. As the series unfolded, the battles were fierce. The margins razor thin. Moments of brilliance interspersed with mistakes. But through it all, Jokic maintained his calm. He realized that legacy wasn't built on individual performances alone. It was built on impact, on the ripples a player sent through his team, his opponents, and the fans who watched. LeBron and Luka, in their new partnership, were rewriting what leadership looked like in the modern NBA. Their blend of experience and youth, power and finesse, made them a force unlike any other. But Jokic saw himself not as their rival but as their counterpart, a different kind of leader, one who led through subtlety and vision rather than spectacle. In the final game of the series, after a hard-fought victory for the Nuggets, Jokic stood at center court, sweat-soaked and exhausted. He looked around the arena at the fans who cheered not just for a winner, but for the beauty of the contest itself. He thought about what this all meant. The passing of eras, the forging of new paths, the endless pursuit of greatness. Basketball was more than a game. It was a language, a way to communicate across time and place. And in that moment, Nikola Jokic knew he had spoken it fluently. Because legacy, he realized, was not a destination. It was motion.